Westport Business to Business group. We'd like to start off by a pledge allegiance to the flag, and it's my honor to introduce you to our adjutant, Thomas Flynn, who will lead us in that.
Thank you, Commander. Please join me in our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Have your seats, please.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to go over the rules for the evening, but I would like to start off by introducing our superintendent of schools, Thomas Auburn, as a welcome, because we're kind of using his facilities today. And also, Evan, I think is around here, Evan Jenner, who's the chair of the school committee. Evan, please stand up, and thank you, Evan. There are a number of functions that are going on tonight at the schools, and people will be coming in and out, and I think maybe the girls soccer team will be heading back in a little while from an event as well. And so please bear with us, but you're in the school, and there's a lot of activity, and that's the good news. And so we'll be seeing people come in and out throughout the evening. Also, some people from the civics class, high school civics class, will be coming in. They are in various activities as well. So I ask you to be courteous and respectful because you're representing the taxpayers of the town of Westport, and we're pretty proud of that. And certainly any folks that are from other communities that are in the 8th district, we welcome you here this evening as well. I'm going to go over the rules, but I want to start off by recognizing a gentleman who's created this reason that we're all here tonight. That's our State Representative Paul Smith, who's announced his retirement. Paul, please stand. We appreciate everything you've done for our community, Paul, and really thank you, and looking forward to you as the next commander of the American Legion. So Paul is also a member of the Veterans Legion. Now, I'd like to really kind of talk a little bit before we get started about some of the rules that we're dealing with. We have 5 people here tonight that are going to be filling in as our new representative in the 8th district. And there'll be one of 160 people representing the House of Representatives, and in our case, the town of Westport, along with some of the surrounding communities and some of those precincts within the surrounding communities. And some of those folks are here this evening. So we're going to give people an opportunity, candidates, an opportunity to have a conversation with our communities. And we're going to do that in a way that's going to be kind of, if you would, folksy, if we can do that, and respectful, and we definitely will do that. And if we can do that, the other rules are kind of flexible. So we're going to start off with having the candidates each have about 2 minutes. We have some timers. If we tend to go over, we'll kind of roll that in a little bit and coordinate that. But the timers will try to keep people on task. So we'll give each candidate 2 minutes for opening remarks. And then we have an opportunity to address, before we go into questions from the audience, to address that from the perspective of the town of Westport. We have some concerns, issues, comments that the community would like to make as it relates to agriculture, as it relates to fishing, as it relates to small businesses and businesses in general, and also as it relates to families and the family budgets. And we want to address those 4 topics. We have some people within the community that are going to do that represent, we call it a panel, a forum. I see only one person sitting in that seat now, but I know the other folks are in the audience, so I'll call upon them when we get into that section. That'll be the first thing we do after we have the introductions. And from that point, we're going to kind of open it up to the floor. We have a mic down here. We'll invite folks down. I'll try to recognize you. And, you can ask all the candidates, or one of the candidates if you'd like, questions, as long as it's respectful. And you can do it in a kind of a timely fashion so we can respect everybody that's here. We kind of move this along, if we could, during the evening. Is that clear to everybody? Anybody have a problem with that? I guess my role is going to be to kind of stay out of the way, recognize people, and kind of keep the thing moving with the assistance of a number of folks that are going to be doing the timing, and some of the folks, if necessary, that can coordinate things. If we get into a question that becomes argumentative, I'm going to stop you. And plain and simple, that's what we're going to do. And I'll ask you to take it some other place. Take it outside, have another conversation some other place with respect to everybody here. And as students are coming in and out, I want to make sure that we can do this in a very courteous way and be respectful to everybody here. Whether we agree or disagree with any candidates, we certainly want to give them respect for their interest in participating in this event tonight. So thank you ahead of time for your cooperation in that. So with those comments, unless there's any other questions from the audience, I'd like to begin. I'd like to start off, I guess we'll just go down the road here, Steve. A couple of questions here, folks. I know some folks like to walk around. The mics are better if you talk into them the way I'm talking into them. And I think then we can project voices a lot easier. So I'd suggest that maybe you sit down for your comments instead of coming to the podium. If you're more comfortable come to the podium, fine. You're welcome to do that. Just talk into it. But don't stop walking around with the mics because I think you're going to have some problems. Okay? So we'll start off and we'll have 2 minutes each for each candidate and then we'll proceed from there. Thank you. Steve. Whatever you prefer, Steve.
Okay. Everybody hear me okay? Yes. Thank you. Good evening, I'm Steve Willett. I'd like to thank the organizers for putting this forum together, and my family and team for being here, and all of you for coming out tonight. I'm here asking for your vote for state representative of the 8th Bristol District. That consists of 13 precincts. 1C in New Bedford, 2 and 3 in Acushnet, 2 and 3 in Freetown, 1A, 6A, and 6B in Fall River, and all of Westport. I have the honor of currently working in 2 of those communities. Acushnet is their school's facilities director, and the Westport Select Board, where I've been serving for over 20 years, along with serving on numerous boards and committees. I was also a reserve police officer in Westport for nearly 20 years, and served as a call firefighter. I've had the pleasure of working with current Representative Paul Schmidt on a variety of issues affecting both of those communities. I'm proud to have had his endorsement, along with Senator Rogers, and 2 of my colleagues on our select board, Chairperson Sean Tees and Clerk Craig Dutra. They've endorsed me because they know I develop relationships and work with others to get things done for the people I serve. I'm running to be your state representative because I believe I can use my proven leadership and years of experience to build on what I've done in Westport. When I see a problem, I bring people together and resources together to find a solution. And then I roll up my sleeves and get to work. For example, years ago, the Route 6 and Sanford Road intersection in Westport was one of the most dangerous in the region. After a series of major accidents, I created a task force to address the issue. We worked with our legislators, state and regional agencies to solve the problem. Together we made numerous upgrades and made it safer. We got the job done. I would stop my term with relationships like these already in place and can hit the ground running. I want you to believe that when you send your children to school, they're in a safe learning environment, that your schools have what they need to run the facilities and to provide a great educational experience. I believe that our seniors and veterans also need safe spaces, and they need communities that are accessible, walkable, and have the services they need. As a 4th-generation Westport native, I, along with my wife Kim, attended Westport schools. Most of my family lives in town. My daughter and her family, my new baby grandson Lincoln, my mother, 2 and 3 of my sisters and aunts. My time's up. I'm asking if you to believe in Steve and vote for me on November 5th. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mayor Sorge, independent candidate for state representative. I'd like to thank Tony Vieira, the American Legion. I'd like to thank Tony Vieira, Business to Business, the American Legion, as well as the Westport High School for hosting this forum. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here to see and question your state representative candidates. I truly appreciate, and I'm sure that the other candidates appreciate this great opportunity to present ourselves to you and answer any questions that you may have, the moderators that you may have. We all know that state representatives vote on many issues that affect our lives, from public safety to taxes and everything in between. But a state representative should never vote for what a political party or special interest wants. It's what the people want. That's what matters. That being said, I personally feel that the most important issue residents of Westport and South Coast have is the quality of life that we will pass on to our children, and the affordability, and a safe environment. And this financial duty is not just a city or a town responsibility, This is also the duty and fiscal responsibility of our state government. As your state representative, I intend on being a strong advocate for the state to utilize some of the tax dollars that we all have been paying forever to make sure that our families at least have clean drinking water and a safe living environment and working environment. I, Manny Soares, humbly and respectfully ask for your consideration for voting for me, Manny Soares, for Westport in the 8th District Bristol State Representative. You can count on me as your representative to never vote for special interests or along party lines. Thank you.
Laura?
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much to all of those who organized it. And thank you for your consideration. I am asking for your vote on November 5th. I grew up in this area, graduated from Bishop Conley High School, went to UMass Amherst, went to law school, moved back initially to Boston, where I worked at a large law firm and negotiated and facilitated billion-dollar real estate development projects. I then transitioned to focusing on critical infrastructure resiliency and cybersecurity and other infrastructure issues at a very large scale, at which point I decided to move home and focus on what matters in my hometown where I'm from. And since that time, I've been here and practicing law and also cleaning water through phytoremediation and other natural techniques. I understand that we are at a critical juncture, that there is a lot of division in politics generally, and having a dialogue, a real meaningful dialogue where everyone's voice is heard, respected, and listened to is absolutely essential for a functioning democracy. And I know that at the State House I will be able to do that despite the bipartisan structure. Big focus is on making sure that our environmental policies and our environmental projects are done in a way that benefits everyone and that is looking forward into the next 100 years, not backwards. And it's also critically important for our communities to make sure that our tax dollars are being put to good use for everyone's benefit. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering further questions.
I promise I'm not going to walk around the stage, okay? No, actually, if you would want. Yeah, right. I won't answer, I'm not going to answer, I will do that.
Sure thing. Hello everyone, I'm Jesse St. Gelais. I'm 41 years old. I'm the independent candidate from Acushnet. So feeling a little left out over here, you know, as everybody here is from Westport. But I'd like to thank you all for having me here. Thank you, Tony, for putting this on. Thank you, Representative Schmidt, for everything you've done for this town. So, here's the thing. When you look around and you see party politics taking over our voice, that's really the reason why I decided to run in this race. There's so much division. We need a strong voice that's going to go up to the State House and represent everyone. We're not going to just toe the party line. We're not going to look out for our own interests. We're going to look out for you. That's what my campaign is all about. What I look to use is my experience running my insurance agency. For the last 25 years, I've been, actually a lot of you out there I insure in this town too. You know, recognize a couple familiar faces here. But I've been protecting your most valuable assets for a long time. And your lives, and your family members. Now, what I look to do is I look to use that experience that I have running a business, in walking and knocking, and talking to people to get business from people. Now, I've been doing that. I've actually touched probably about 6,000 doorsteps at this point over here. I feel it's very important to go ahead and walk, knock, and talk, and listen, more importantly than anything, to all of you out here. And that's what my campaign's been about, is finding out what you want me to do as your representative. And I think that's very important when you make a decision on November 5th, is that you need to look at your candidate and make sure that they're already doing the work for you. Because if they're not doing it now, they're not going to do it when they get elected. So I just want to keep that very clear with everyone. But I'll tell you right now, we have a lot of working families out there. They're struggling. We have seniors that are barely making ends meet, veterans that are feeling unappreciated. We have business owners that feel like they don't have a voice at the State House. And we have mental illness and drugs taking over. And they're taking our loved ones away from us. We need to address these issues and stop running on it as far as just to get elected. Let's get to work and let's get results that we all deserve. So as your independent voice, trust me, I don't have a problem with anybody being a Democrat or Republican or anything like that. Let's all come together, get rid of the division, and let's just get results that we all deserve. Thank you.
It's time for action. And it's time for our district to have a representative. We're still done? Oh. Don't want to be yelling, trust me. So I'll tell you, it's time for action. And it's time for our district to have a representative who listens to you. It's time to start taking care of our seniors. It's time to start taking care of our veterans and our schools instead of throwing away billions of unaccounted for tax dollars on a manufactured migrant crisis. It's time for young working families like yours and mine to be able to afford a home, to be able to afford our groceries, to be able to afford to take care of our kids and sometimes our parents. It's time for us to recognize that the policies coming from the Democratic supermajority on Beacon Hill are tearing apart our families and they're destroying our economy. They're destroying our environment with so-called clean energy that only serves to pollute our waters, soil our beaches, kill our fishing industry, and raise our power bills even more. It's time for a representative that understands what it means to respect the will of the voters of the district, who understands that being an effective legislator is more than just saying people over party, and it's more than just being a cog in a party machine. It's time for something different. It's time for someone to stand up for accountability and transparency and for affordability in the state. My name is Christopher Thrasher, and I'm asking for your vote because it's time for action that makes your voice heard loud and clear over all the noise and all the confusion. And don't let anyone tell you that we can't solve these problems, because we can. It just takes one thing, and that's action. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate that. I know sometimes that timing gets a little messy, but we're pretty flexible with that. Steve, I think we probably cut you up more than anybody else, and that's because you're closest to the center. We saw that going on. But we try to work with that and move it along. But let's enjoy ourselves a little bit. There's water there on the table. Candidates, please help yourself. I have a limited budget. I don't really share it with everybody, but George kind of put me on a tight budget for this one for the American Legion. We're fixing the building up, so every nickel and dime counts. The next phase of this will be kind of a panel discussion. And the panel is spread out among us. I have seats down front, but it was difficult to get them together to sit as a panel. But the reason we did that is the community really wanted to make sure that their voice would be heard as it relates to some of the things that are pretty important within the town of Westport in particular and within our region in general. So we've identified some folks from the business community. Part of the co-sponsorship tonight is from Westport Business to Business. We thought it was appropriate that we have somebody from the business community that has some experience in this area and wanted to kind of have a first-hand opportunity to discuss some of the things that are very important to the business community here in Westport, both small businesses and larger businesses. We have somebody representing that group, and I'll have them ask the first round of questions. We also have somebody from the agricultural community. I'm looking around to see if he's here yet. If not, we'll deal with the agricultural community as well. We have a fishing community, and we have somebody representing the fishing community that'll be talking. Then we have a family. We have a mom that wants to talk about just dealing with the family budgets and dealing with some of the issues that when they were teenagers, they didn't really have the same kinds of problems to some degree. Substance abuse, some of those issues. And I may call upon one of our members of the Board of Health that I see in the audience here that maybe could help us with that as well. But those are areas that the state has got involved in over the years. And you're going to hear from the perspective of some of these folks, some of the positives and maybe possibly some of the negatives. But we want to not really kind of point out those positive and negatives. We want to point out an action agenda going forward and trying to see if we can build on that. And so the comments that are being made here tonight are in a kind of a positive vein to just try to, first of all, awareness of what those issues are. And secondly, the successful candidate hopefully will be remembering some of the comments that they heard here tonight when they sit in Boston with their other representatives to try to address some of these issues. I'd like to start off by somebody, probably if you have lived in Westport any time at all, have probably walked into a store, and that's Al Leeds. Al, would you speak for the business community for us right now?
Thank you, Tony. Actually, I wish I could. I'm a recovering grocer, and I haven't actually had my hand directly in business for 10 years, but I have had in the last few years my hand deeply involved in the finance committee. And so what I would like to do, if I can shift gears just a little bit and ask everybody, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to do it this way, okay? Hello, everybody. Yes. One of the things, and I'm speaking as a taxpayer and not for the finance committee, so I want to make that very, very clear. But one of the things that Westport and area towns face all the time is finance, of course. I mean, there's never enough money to go around. There's always wants and needs that we all face. And one of the primary ways that Westport is able to supplement a pretty tight budget when it comes to Prop 2.5 and property tax is the cherry sheet. Now, the cherry sheet, if you don't know, is local aid that comes from the state. Pardon me. And over the years, and Google, I have to say, search engines can be your best friend and your worst enemy. But I did go over and did a lot of work on the Department of Local Services website recently and found that from 2019 to 2024, the state contributed or sent back to Westport a total of $44,181,000, give or take. Having said that, if the state, because it's a convoluted formula that they use in almost every single category, it varies by year. If we had simply taken in 2019 that number and increased it by the consumer price index of any given year at the same time, Westport would have received $50,000, $606,000. So we are in a deficit based on what we actually got versus what we could have gotten with just a simple CPI increase of about $6,500,000. What I'd like to do is just ask everybody here what your thoughts are, what you think can be done about it, if anything, and what your recommendation would be moving forward vis-a-vis the formulas that are used and working with the legislature. So 44 million, sorry about
And
that.
you said 54,000.
And it was 50,606 we
Let
would have
me
done.
see if I can kind of summarize that real quickly and ask all the candidates to speak to that a little bit. What Al is speaking from is there's a couple of real big pieces at the state level. One's a cherry sheet, obviously. And the cherry sheet is based on, Paul could tell you and others in the audience, in terms of the formula for the ability to pay within the communities. And Westport, over the years, it's kind of taken it on the chin a little bit because at least the state feels that we have more of an ability to pay than the taxpayers of Westport feel they have the ability to pay. And so our percentage of reimbursement from the state has reflected that. So I think what Al is saying is that over the years, we've kind of lost it in that situation, and we'd like to see what your thoughts are in terms of the responsibility of the state, one, to fund certain areas related to town services and also school services, but also the idea of funding. There's a lot of things that have passed over the years that have become state law, but the funds don't come with them. And we like to call them unfunded mandates. We're mandated to do stuff, but they don't give us the money to pay for it. And that comes out of the local family budgets. So with that kind of summary, who wants to volunteer to go first? Everybody's going to have a shot at it. You get extra points if you go first.
I would be happy to
Okay, Chris.
start on this one. So first of all, thank you, Mr. Lees, very much for this question. And I serve with Mr. Lees on the Finance Committee. And I will tell you that the issue with these unfunded mandates in particular is one of the main reasons I decided to jump in this race. So you mentioned that even if the funding had kept pace with inflation, we were looking at a structural deficit there somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 million. And when you actually look at the numbers as far as what is received in terms of not just the Chapter 70 reimbursements, but the unrestricted funds, Westport only took in, I think this last budget, I have this number in front of me, it's only $1,498,000 and change. And when you look at the amount of services that all the towns in the Commonwealth and in this district are providing, these structural deficits exist not just in Westport, but in many other towns. And this speaks to a need to not only go and do the dirty work of trying to figure out how these formulas need to be adjusted, but it also does speak to priorities. And in the last year of Charlie Baker's
Chris, let's wrap it up if we could. Let's wrap it up if we could.
Well, I'll tell you this, in the last year of Charlie Baker's administration, there was a nearly $5 billion surplus that the state had. Now, the last year, the budget deficit before the supplemental bills was $149 million. That's deficit. That speaks to a lack of understanding of what really are priorities that move the needle and that will actually help cities and towns meet their obligations and again be able to keep taxes down. The bottom line is we need an entire reevaluation of these funding formulas from top to bottom, and that's something that it's going to be very difficult to do if we just keep electing the same type of party up there. So there you go.
Okay, we got one response. Thank you, Chris. Who's next? Who wants to be next?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve. You can talk into it.
Sure, I can tell you there's a selectman that's come up numerous times where I've called Paul or Mike and said, hey, what's the story? We're hosting one of the biggest beaches in the state. Our town is split with state highways. We're split by Route 88, we're split by 177 the other way. We've got 195 and 106. We use a heck of a lot of public service. So I take their word for it. Hey, look, we're going to try to get you earmarks. We're going to, what you don't get straight up regarding the Cherry Street, we're going to help you out in other areas. And they've come through. We have $100,000 earmark, if you will, or a grant to help us with the old high school to do studies and whatnot. $1 million for Route 6. So, and Westport, there's been a heck of a lot of money put into it. We now get a host fee for cars going in there. It helps out public safety. Goes specifically public safety in our town. So there's been other ways to make up for some of the funds. Obviously, we want to try to get the most we can, but I've been fairly happy with what we got when we asked for it to help our community. But again, yes, we want to keep chipping away to get what we can.
Thank you. Next. Laura's, okay, Laura, go for it.
My initial impression is that at the bare minimum, the amount should be increased based on CPI. There are so many programs that similarly have not had funding increases in a decade. Disabled seniors, inflation is going through the roof, and the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is a reflection of that. So to the extent that the cherry sheet formulas are not keeping pace with inflation, that is absolutely something that needs to be addressed forthwith. To be candid, I have not looked at the details of the cherry sheet formulas, and so if elected, when elected, I shall do that, and if there are adjustments to the formulas that need to be made, then so be it. Bottom line, keeping funding in line with inflation based on CPI, because that's the most reliable indicator, is common sense, really. As far as unfunded mandates go, I completely agree that it's just unacceptable. I don't know if folks are aware, in 1997 there were policy changes made that made all regulatory programs in Massachusetts have to be self-funded. That means the Department of Environmental Protection has to get funding from fines and fees. This is not the case in the vast majority of states, and frankly, it's just really bad policy. It flips the whole structure around. So to have unfunded mandates and to have unfunded regulatory programs that then shift burden and the cost to individual taxpayers and to municipalities is unacceptable, and adjusting that forthwith is very, very important, and one of the main agenda items that I will be working on, so that people don't have to suffer. We shouldn't bear the cost individually as taxpayers or individually as a town.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, got two left. Who's next? I'll flip a coin. Okay, Manny said he's last. You're supposed to, if you say something, you have to go next, so you're next, Manny. Talk into the mic.
I'd like to thank Laura for that on the unfunded mandates. I mean, that was one of the reasons I ran for planning board 4 years ago, was local unfunded mandate. I was fortunate enough last week to sit down with Senator Rodrigues and some of the department heads in town over a round table for lunch. And he, you know, both Paul and Mike have done great things for the town. And they've brought a lot to the table. And one of the things that Mike was talking about with our department heads are other ways and things that we need to pursue, such as grants. You know, other than the team that we've built on the planning board, you know, the fire department, the police department, they've been chasing the grants. On the select board's level, I really think they're falling behind. We need to empower somebody to be a grant writer. The money's there, we need to chase it, bring it back to Westport, make up the difference from the cherry sheet. It's there. You know, they were talking about ambulances and fire engines and stuff like that. Different things you can get so that you can keep the money that comes to operate and not buy equipment. Get grants for specific equipment, stuff like that. We just got to keep pursuing it. We just had an assistant town planner leave. Our planning department has brought millions into the town just this last year. I was talking to the chairman, Mr. White, and I believe we're ready to put the other person. We've interviewed and we're going to hire another person, so we'll be full staff there again and continue that work. But we can't do this by Proposition 2.5 override. Our families what the town's feeling, the families are feeling it worse. The seniors, the veterans, our youth, they can't put any more in. We gotta do what we gotta do to help them.
Jessica?
Last but not least, sorry. So unfunded mandates, I mean, that in a nutshell, does that make any sense to the average person, right? We have these unfunded mandates. We have our government basically imposing something, forcing us to do something when we don't have a way to pay for it. We need to foster growth for business. We need to make sure that business can thrive in all of our communities. We need somebody that's going to go up there at the State House and advocate for that and be strong about it and be able to work with everyone on both sides of the aisle. One thing that you got to worry about here is that if you do have somebody playing on the back bench, they're not going to get anything done. If you have somebody that's going to go up there guns blazing, they're not going to get anything done. If you have somebody that's going to go up there and work with everyone, they will get something done. I'm living proof of it. I've been doing it for a long time. But as far as funding anything, grants are great, but grants aren't playing the long game. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but what I'm saying is that's very short-sighted to rely on that and to run a town that way. We need to make sure that Massachusetts becomes a better place to do business, because that's ultimately what we need, is we to make sure that we keep jobs here and business growth here. We need to make sure that we're not, again, back to what you said about Prop 2.5, that's not an answer to go ahead and raise our taxes. We have people that, we're at wit's end with this. We can't afford it anymore. I don't know if anybody's looked around, but we're in a kind of a terrible situation when it comes to inflation, right? So I'd love to see some stabilization for seniors though, with their, maybe we can protect them from their taxes going up. I'd love to see that. Maybe we can look into some programs and explore that with, up there at the State House, but a little bit of a common sense approach. Let's try to attract some more business growth in these areas here, and that way we can create jobs. We'll have a nice commercial tax base coming in too. Thank you.
I want to give Mr. Lees an opportunity to follow up from his perspective on what he heard here.
Very, very briefly. I have a copy here from the Mass Association of School Superintendents, unfunded and underfunded state and federal education mandates. 9 pages long, single space. 9 pages. Secondly, I want to just quickly do a few comments here. Recent article, State Auditor in the Boston Globe, State Auditor DeZoglio issued a scathing audit of the Massachusetts legislature. The pushback from legislative leaders was swift and predictable. She loudly criticized the legislature of one of the most opaque legislative bodies in the country. In 2022, and I think this gets to the point that we're talking about right here, Susan Bump, who was the auditor at the time, identified $1.2 billion in unfunded mandates, the biggest chunk relating to school transportation and special ed. State law prohibits unfunded mandates requiring the legislature to fund anything it requires cities and towns to do, but practically, lawmakers either often ignore these obligations or they appropriate only a portion of mandated expenses for school transportation. In her example, the rest of it falls onto us, which takes away from funding for other sources. Grants, in my opinion, are they're nice, but they're not a solution. Hope is not a strategy. And lastly, on August 28th, WGBH asked, why does the Massachusetts legislature wait so long to do so much? The answer, according to many, started with the fact that the power in both House and Senate had become increasingly concentrated in the hands of the leadership and their lieutenants. Now, none of this is surprising, and I'm going to end it with this, but grants are great, grants are necessary, but they are not a guarantee. What we need is to have a legislative action that solidifies a solid funding source for all the towns and creates funding for the mandates that we don't really have a lot of say in. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Al. Before we leave the business forum, I think I need to speak on behalf of small businesses, in particular in Westport, that really, since COVID, it just, in many cases, the way they have done business since COVID, if they're still doing business, is difficult. And some of that can be handled differently by the state. Be handled by the various state agencies, and a lot of them have expressed that, certainly through the business-to-business network. I don't see Ace Hardware here tonight. Anybody from Ace? Okay. They've been working quite a bit, as others have, but Ace in particular has taken the lead, and they call it business-to-business, where they've reached out to other businesses and provided some opportunities for purchasing or have an account with them, so when the funds come in, they can handle it and just kind of help them sustain their businesses. And we're looking for that from the business community more from the state level. It's not just mandates, it's having appreciation to how to run a business, to sign the front of the check and the back of the check. And some of the folks that have passed legislation, the business community would tell you, have made it very difficult for them to sign the front of the check. And certainly when they're doing payrolls, some of the legislation in the last few years have made it very difficult, certainly during COVID and after COVID, even do business. One of the areas we know, just from the American Legion standpoint, prevailing wage. There are a lot of people that are in the carpentry areas and painting and some of those areas working with state officials. They need to have a prevailing wage, and that sounds great, and it sounds everybody would want to do that. Why wouldn't you want to pay the prevailing wage? Well, it's okay if you're on a fair playing field, and some of the contractors have told me, and I believe them because I've seen it firsthand with our own bidding for a process at the American Legion, where the cost of doing business is different when you're dealing with the state. It's inflated when you're dealing with the state. And there are folks that are specialized in that area a little bit. So I'm speaking on behalf of the small businesses through business to business. Please take a look at that. And it's easy to run a business locally and be very competitive and provide a service to the community as a small business. But once the state gets into that, unless there's a better appreciation for the regional parts of that, it's very difficult. A business almost has to make a decision of, do I work for the state and work the bidding processes through the state, or do I work as an independent businessman and serve my community? You can't do both. The margins are different when you do that. So I said that on behalf of some folks that are sitting in the audience, but don't want to address that, so I am doing that. I will recognize the audience in a second, but Donna, if you had something, by all means, you raised it. You want to come off the mic? Or?
I just want to say, I don't need a microphone, is that I'm not getting to know the candidates because you're spending a lot of time talking in the cities. But I'm hearing from you, but I'm not hearing from the candidates, and I believe that's why we're here. Yeah, so instead of making policy statements or statements about the state of Massachusetts, to pose it in a question for the candidates so we can hear their response.
Well, that's what Al was trying to do. We will cut down as we make the presentation part of it, but we were trying to clarify that. Is Ray here this evening? Ray was speaking. Ray was going to be speaking on behalf of the agricultural community, and he was going to propose a couple of questions that the agricultural community had, and they wanted to address. We also have a couple other folks who were addressing other concerns. And we wanted to do that, and we organized this, the people that asked me to do that, they wanted to hear the responses of all the candidates to those areas. That's why we had the panel to stop. If there are people in the audience who would like to change the format, I'm comfortable with it. I don't have a problem with it. We can come up to the mic and we can start asking questions of individuals, or we can start asking questions of the group. So I have no problem with that. I don't see Ray, and I think there's a fishermen's community representative here. Sir, would you come down, and, because I know the fishermen had some questions, I'd like to have them be heard. And kind of keep the questions if you can, try to organize that and keep it small so we can have the responses. We are speaking, and we held this forum for the benefit of the taxpayers who presented that to me. I don't want to do this. I'm here by default, quite frankly. But I told them I would try to organize it in period of time, a short period of time, a couple of weeks, so people can be heard of it. I might not please everybody. My opportunity here tonight is to try to give you an opportunity to be heard and have your questions answered. So that's kind of where we're going from. Fishing community in particular had some concerns and want to address the candidates. This is your opportunity, sir. Please state your name and then go from there.
Thank you. John Harron, Northeast Fishery Sector 13. Several months ago, a wind turbine blade disintegrated. Lucky for Westport, the tide, the current, the wind were in the right direction. Had it been the other way, you would have been the recipient of a lot of trash. Your budget and every town and city in the neighborhood does not have any money set aside to pay for remediation, losses, and cleanup and transportation of the material. So, on day one, would you be willing to force legislation to have Vineyard Wind have a bond to pay for repairs, remediation, loss of taxes? Right now, should anything happen, there is no money for decommissioning and there is no money for the town of Westport to be reimbursed. Secondly, the fishing industry, every year, is for the last couple of years through Charlie Baker and his administration, has been a recipient of food security grants. You as a consumer, you eat 90% of your food, seafood, is foreign. We'd like to change that. The food security grant, unfortunately, the fishing industry only gets like 5% or 10% maximum out of it. Most of it goes to farms, okay, fine. But we'd like to see a little bit increase in that, so we'd like to see you look into that in the future. Once again, the fishing industry is overregulated, is in dire straits, and we need a buyout. Unfortunately, that's not an issue for you on this board to answer, that comes from the state. But we need your help in asking our state legislator, the senators, to push forward a buyout in the near future. The wind farms will put us out of business. It's a guarantee. Thank you.
What is your position? I'm going to try to summarize what I just heard. There's a concern in Westport about offshore wind. Somebody asked me to repeat the question, that's what I'm doing.
Basically, I'm asking you on the first day you're in office, would you initiate a bond to cover the cost of remediation, loss of taxes, and any other costs the town of Westport and any other city or town will incur with those disintegrating blades, which we know will happen in the future?
Okay, thank you. Yep. Oh, Manny, you're first. Good.
I'll promise you, day one, I'll look into that. 'Cause the major concern is that should be already in place. And if it isn't, we're in trouble. I know firsthand that they fail throughout the world. They're failing on land right now. We have a contractor that's from Westport that's traveling the country dismantling these windmills right now. On land, they're millions of dollars to take them down. You can't imagine the cost if they're abandoned out there, what it's going to cost us. My problem, and that's one of the things where I say I'm an independent candidate. It's no different when the Democrats get in the last presidential election, they shut down the pipeline. You know, offshore wind's going. I'm in support of jobs. I'm in support of unions, but it needs to be done responsibly. And what we're seeing right now, I will hold them accountable and look out for the fishermen.
Who wants to go next? Steve?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something I look into to start right off. We need to know the impact, we need to know the remediation, we need to get together with fishermen and their representatives to see exactly what the input is and with the impact, and we address it. Obviously, there's a concern when you have styrofoam floating all over the place, but if you're a fisherman, once you know you go past the Texas towers, we see a steady stream of trash coming from other states, all kinds of garbage out there. So there's concerns across the board for our ocean, but certainly, we need to address the exploding, if you will, blades and the impact. And I certainly hope the testing they say that's going to be required comes true. But yes, it is definitely something we need to look into. I understand that the fishing industry in New Bedford is actually helping with the blades and doing some transport and whatnot. So we'd have to look at the overall economy. That's what I understand. I have not got together with the fishing groups, to be honest with you, but I understand there is boats helping the process, making some funds out of it.
Jesse?
So earlier today, I actually did get together with the fishing groups. I was at the Whaling City Seafood Auction right downtown in New Bedford. There was actually a few other, there was a lobsterman, Skip, right here from Westport. I was talking to him too as well. I actually have a piece of one of those windmills right in my vehicle outside. It's ridiculous. So to answer your question as far as allowing a business such as offshore wind to come in and do business here without requiring them to be essentially insured, that if their blades break off and they damage our precious ocean, it's very irresponsible to even allow that in the first place. There's a lot of issues there. I'm going to go on and on a little bit here about even right down to as far as the quotas, that we have issues with that. And it's killing our fishing industry. Our fishing industry, not only is it our fishing industry, and we bring in food for our tables, that also affects everyone, because the people that work in that industry. You have a lot of businesses that run based on that industry. So if you don't have people that have a job because they're being forced out because of wind, let's say, for example, then guess what? They're not going to be sitting down at your restaurant, shopping at your store, insuring with my business, let's say, for example, buying a home or doing anything for that matter. So it is going to be a widened effect here. If we don't really put the brakes on it and start listening to our people that are out there fishing those waters and get a very accurate assessment on what's going on. They are the experts. We have to listen to them. Today, I was listening to them. I think that all of us candidates should make the time to listen to the people that are in the business. The boots on the ground, that's it. That's who you listen to. And shame on anyone that hasn't educated themselves on that and actually spoke to these people and listened to them. Again, keep that in mind when you go to vote. I'm one of those people. My job is to go out there and find the answers. My job is to get elected and represent all of you. My job is to bring home the bacon, local aid we were just talking about. We need to go out there and get that. We can't be putting it on our backs anymore. But we got to pump the brakes here on this. Now, for all forms of energy, but we have to pump the brakes. We're killing an industry. And I know there's a lot of fishermen out here that I've spoken to that rely on that. So we need to really, really take a hard look here and listen to people like that man right there. Thank you.
Chris?
Sure. Fire away. It's very hard when talking about this subject for me not to start yelling and start ranting and raving, because I will tell you, we've been sold a bill of goods on this entire offshore wind scam. And yes, I use the word scam, I don't take it lightly. The budget, the last budget that just came through, I think it had, $9,900,000, almost $10 million worth of direct subsidies from state funding to the offshore wind industry. There is an offshore wind tax credit of up to $35 million for these developers, and yet there is no requirement for a bond for damages when something like this, like the blade, happens. There's no requirement that the offshore wind developers have to do anything when they leak any hydraulic oil into the ocean. There's no accountability for when the blades are certified at testing centers that aren't even long enough to accommodate the size of the blades, so they cut the blades in half and then they do the math wrongly, obviously. And we pay the price when we walk down our beaches, and the amount of fiberglass that we see, that we saw when that blade disintegrated is not even the slightest microcosm of how much of that fiberglass is actually in the ocean now. You asked directly, would I stand up for a bond requirement in the legislature? And my answer is unequivocally yes from day one. Not only is a bond requirement necessary to be able to take care of these damages when it happens, but also we really have to look at the actual structures of these developers. Vineyard Wind is an LLC. If Vineyard Wind suddenly ceases to exist, there's no further way to try and get compensation back for damages. There's 1,001 things that I can talk about how the offshore wind industry is killing our fishing industry. It is from top to bottom, nothing but a money grab. It has nothing to do with green energy. The technology that's being built here is not even technology that has been used anywhere else in the world. We're being used as guinea pigs, we're being sold a bill of goods, and it's time for somebody to stand up and say enough is enough and start fixing this.
Well, to start, the concept that a cable is coming through Westport is way premature as far as I'm concerned and as far as I think most people in Westport are concerned. If there have been deals done behind closed, locked doors, we need sunlight on them. Bottom line, we need environmental impact statements. We need to make sure that if it's even considered to go under the Westport River, that it doesn't kill the East Branch. And to answer your question, day one, I would get a copy of all of the contracts and all the agreements that have been put in place to date to see what exactly the state of affairs is. We cannot have fiberglass shards washing up on our beaches. We can't have our fishing industry crippled by good intentions. It is not in everyone's best interest. As far as a bond requirement, I would first look at the contracts and the structure that is currently in place. I have not been able to find complete copies of them, so I have not been able to review them yet. And it seems like a bond would be a logical way to protect our community. At the end of the day, our community cannot and should not suffer trying to advance green energy while being a guinea pig. We need to definitely pump the brakes as far as if there are things in the works, which in New Bedford at the debate, it sounded like it's already being built, which is appalling. That's appalling. We can't have backroom deals being pushed through without anybody knowing. It's unacceptable. And as far as the windmills offshore go, we do need to have quite a few discussions to consider whether or not we are okay with this as a community. And our fishing industry does need to be very much involved in any discussions. We absolutely have to move forward, if at all, in a prudent manner. The idea that they're just going to put a cable in is absolutely unacceptable, violative of so many laws, and it's wrong. And we urgently need transparency, radical transparency, especially on something that affects everyone. We definitely need transparency.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. Okay, what the next phase we're going to do now is we have a podium down here with a mic. We're going to invite questions from the audience, and just raise your hand. I'll recognize you, come up, and you can ask the question. John, looks like you got your hand up. George will be next, and anybody just get your hands up, and when somebody finishes, we'll bring you down, and you can ask the questions.
My name's John Bullard, and I serve on the Westport Planning Board, and also chair the Climate Resilience Committee. And I just need to address some of the discussion on fishing and wind, because there's an awful lot of misinformation that's...
John, let me help. You might have come in a little bit later. This isn't going to be a debate back and forth. We're trying to listen as much as we can to candidates on issues too, so, okay?
Sure. But I was talking to the CFO of South Coast Wind 2 or 3 days ago about the possibility of running cable up the Westport River, and he said, no, we're going up the Secundit River. So when you talk about running a cable up Westport, that's just not happening. Now, I do agree that, and there is an offshore wind advisory committee in Westport, which
Try to
is
get to the question, John.
a very, very good, well, the fishing industry, which I've worked with for about 50 years, does not think like one entity. And I would just make the point, and perhaps I'd phrase it this way, Tony. John Herron, who I worked with when I was regional administrator for NOAA, made a second request which no one addressed, which was, would you work to support the local purchase of fish the way that's often done with agriculture? And that's a great idea. And perhaps you could address that. I would just say that New Bedford is supporting offshore wind and commercial fishing. For 20 years, it's been the #1 fishing port in the country. And somehow the fishermen in New Bedford think they can do fishing and offshore wind. So you might think about a little bit about why are those fishermen who are the #1 fishermen in the country think that they can make money in offshore wind before you start to ban offshore wind. Why do they think they can make money? But my question is, John's question about supporting a buy local, the way we do with farmers to buy local in fish. That's a good question, and you didn't address that one. So would you think about that? Because there is a role you could do with state, getting hospitals to buy fish and other big institutional buyers.
The state taking, what John is saying, the state taking the lead. We did this in agriculture locally, where it's called CMAP, Southeastern Massachusetts Agricultural Partnership. And basically, you kind of matched up people that were buying the product with people that were producing the product. And it's another way of diffusing some of the issues associated with the fishing industry and helping them out a little bit. It's a little bit different than the offshore deal. I think all 5 candidates have made their position clear on offshore. John's speaking fishing in general in terms of a partnership to make those more sustainable fishing opportunities for businesses. Did you want to speak to that a little bit? Anybody have any ideas on that, or the group? Everybody wants to take a crack at it? Next question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Bullock, for your question. So getting back to this food security grant, for example, we're talking about there is a bit of there's a difference between agriculture from farming and fishing as far as the percentage and everything. I think this is a perfect example of forgive the pun, but it's a rising tide lifts all boats situation. I think there's a way to increase the food security grants programs in general to bring up purchases of local fish and local catches. And I think that as far as when you're talking about the matching program, matching to buyers to local suppliers, that is something that certainly needs to increase. And I think that there's always going to be opportunities in the legislature to try and advance those things. I do want to go back to one thing on the offshore wind, and I will say that as far as the coexistence goes, the Port of New Bedford just the other day said that the latest round of leases that were presented were egregiously encroaching on some of the best scalloping areas out in the Atlantic Ocean, and there was serious concern there. A few weeks ago, there was an opening for the north terminal of the New Bedford port, and I was the only candidate out there walking with supporters of the fishing industry and those against the offshore wind boondoggle to protest some of the glad handing, I guess, that was going on behind closed doors with all sorts of dignitaries, including Senator Warren. The bottom line is, you're right, not the fishing industry isn't a single voice. However, very clearly, if you talk to people on the boats, coming off the boats, if you talk to people who have been out there and they see the gargantuan size of these things, if you take a look at the numbers of the yield of the scallop harvest, you will see very clearly there are some great effects happening, and it's only going to get worse if we don't put a stop to it. So, thank you.
Tony, as you know, I support my local. We came up with the local farmers market years ago to support our farmers. You were on economic development. We were kicking around, even trying to help our agriculture have a canning facility in town. So yes, I'm wide open to help in our local area. I mean, years ago we were trying to get more excitement in New Bedford, and it reminded me with all this talk. We came up with a HOT, the regional Congress, just to have more activity, more business, the food services and whatnot in New Bedford, something fun. So yeah, I'm wide open for ideas. Love to be part of it. Our farmers market is still active. We have summer and winter, and that's supporting our local farmers.
So has anyone looked at the price of scallops today? So today I was speaking with Cassie Canastra, and that was something. I mean, it's ridiculous how expensive that is, right? You know, I mean, they're not going to be on the menu anymore if they go up that high. Now, as far as the subsidies that Wind has provided for the fishing industry, that's just putting a Band-Aid over something. You know, I mean, we're putting these windmills in areas where we're fishing. Why aren't we putting them closer to shore? Why aren't we putting them on the shoals? Why aren't we putting them in areas that will affect the fishing industry? I mean, that's something that just to me doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to the fishermen that I spoke to today. I spoke to one gentleman that's been doing this longer than when I've been alive. I'm 41 years old. So, I mean, again, the experts are telling me otherwise. I think that we really need to look into that, and with all the respect, I appreciate all the work that you put in there, and there is, we can't all work together. It's just, we have to make sure that we're not doing it at the expense of another industry.
To directly answer your question, yes, absolutely buying local seafood and making sure that in our local institutions that is prioritized is absolutely something that I would support and do support. The farm-to-table concept is one that we have been working on, and it's working well, and that reduces the cost of living across the board. Food should not have more frequent flyer miles than you or I, and so any way that can help to support our fishermen, buying local and ensuring that our institutions at the local and state level support that, I would absolutely be in favor of.
I'll make one quick comment on the offshore wind and the affordability in our electric bills. That's only the tip of the iceberg. We had, want to say we put the brakes on. As John had said, it's being built. If you go to New Bedford at the pier that they just built, you can see these massive units that they're already being constructed up there. They've already have a 500-ton DC transformer at Brady Point. It's coming and sitting there. They just signed a five-year contract to upgrade the grid. This is where our costs for our electricity, the Green Deal is raising our electrical costs right now. It's only the tip. And the environmental things that are coming to light right now, we need to take a close look at this before we continue. That's all I'll leave for now. And as far as buy local, that's what I've done and my family's done for generations. My family started hauling from Westport to the Boston Farmers Market. That's how my grandfather started his transportation business in 1942. after graduating college in Boston, the big dig was going on, I'm in that industry. I chose to stay on the South Coast and work here for the last 40 years because I love the South Coast. I prefer to go to Ace instead of Home Depot. I prefer to go to a local restaurant than a chain. That's why I'm here, and I totally support buy local. We could do something with the fishing industry. We actually do that a little bit at the point, you know, with the fishermen coming in, selling locally. We've got the oysters out there. We put it right in the restaurant as it comes out. We need to go do a little bit more of that.
Okay, thank you, man. You're going to go to our next speaker. George, you're up next, but Jesse, you had your hand up. Okay, you want to say
I
something?
just wanted to just follow up on that. I mean, again, when you look at like the headline that I think that Chris referred to earlier, just with, you know, elephant trunk, the lava, all that, and more regulation coming down, it's making it very difficult for scallops to be harvested. And that is the lifeblood of New Bedford for sure. Just
Thank
wanted
you.
to bring that to light, that again, we need to make sure that we're not being restrictive on an industry.
Okay, next speaker, and then hands up. Anybody else who wants to be heard? Okay, Jeff and Leanne.
I'm George Stelgis. I'm obviously a senior citizen and a retired soldier. And you've been talking about
And coach of the state.
and volunteer coach for the state champion Westport soccer. Thank you. So, my question is for each candidate. And the question is this: what do you think is the most important issue facing Westport over the next year, and what do you plan to do about it?
Well, right now the opera money's run out and all our gift funds, it's to keep our people and keep a steady budget. We're lucky in town that we had a healthy free cash amount come back of $3 million. So it looks like we're going to be able to survive another year. But it's certainly taking care of our budget, taking care of our people, and obviously the community is a big issue. We're looking into building up Route 6. There's been some pushback on it. We were hoping for more business. We were hoping for more funds coming into the town. With thousands of cars going to Horse Neck every day, they could grab some of their money on the way in and out. But you know, it's a tough battle in town. We don't want to turn into another community with a lot of stores. So in a nutshell, right now we're trying to survive. We're trying to keep your taxes low, and we're going to work hard to do what we can to keep this going, and we'll keep bringing things to the people to have their input to see what they want in this town for options to bring in more funds.
So I think one of the biggest issues that we will be facing in the next year is our water and clean water. It is appalling that people in Westport would go and sign petitions, vote something down at town meeting, vote something down at the polls, and then it would be pushed forward anyway. There's $4 million set aside for PFAS funding, polyfluoroalkylates, forever chemicals. If you put a pipe in, that doesn't do anything for PFAS. If you put an on-tap filter and gave one to every single resident, not household, resident, either activated carbon or reverse osmosis, it would cost $2.54 million. That would leave extra money to help defray the cost of improving someone's septic, improving, gray water systems. There are so many infrastructure projects that now seem to be just barreling along when they're using 100-year-old technologies. We need PFAS out of drinking water, so one of my main priorities would be making sure that the money that's allocated to take out PFAS is actually used for the technology that works to take out PFAS. Because even at water treatment facilities, they don't yet have these processes in place in all facilities. Very, very few do. So putting a pipe in would not improve water quality. And it would give everyone a water bill when currently, with limited exception, they don't have one. So forcing betterment costs and forcing tie-ins for a project that everybody, or the vast majority of people, voted down and moving forward with it anyway, is unacceptable. And we need to focus on making sure that the funds that are allocated to solve problems do solve those problems and are using the technology that works and is working all over the world. Thank you.
I think the number one issue facing Westport now and moving into the future is affordability. So I support the voters' decision not to borrow money to install the sewer and water down Route 6. I support it wholeheartedly. But I do support the sewer and water down Route 6 and the north end of Westport on these undersized lots that cannot maintain a compliant Title V system. So another thing, the PFAS contamination, it also comes from the septic system. So the water pipe, the PFAS grant, storing the water, that solves the immediate public health threat. And the technology for treating the water is in the water treatment plant. Secondly, without a sewer pipe, it does nothing for the environment. So that goes back to the sewer treatment plant. So one of the things, and the reason I support the sewer and water is, like I had said, when I got onto the planning board, it was for an unfunded mandate. As we started getting into the issues, so this sewer and water project for Westport has been studied, has been designed. So we have a Camp Dresser and McGee study, we have a Face Spofford and Thorndike study. We have, as of most recent, we had the master plan, which will be coming up on 10 years now. I got involved in the 5-year master plan. We had the Kleinfeld integrated water plan. And any of these candidates, if any of them have read that, Laura, I don't know if you've read that, but I think you should read the millions of dollars that we have in this project already. And the other thing is we had the DEP knocking on our door. When they reviewed the work that Westport has done in the master plan review, in the planning board, they left. They're busy right now on the Cape. But if we don't do what we said we were going to do, they'll be back. They were looking for a watershed permit to mandate us. We were doing it on our own. That's why I support the sewer water down Route 6. And the residents, 3,000 residents, that now, so when the water main's coming through, and the people were, they thought they were going to get a betterment charge. This is going to be put in front of their house. If they need to tie in, they tie in. If they don't need to tie in, they don't. It's very simple.
And then they're going to have a water and sewer bill from here on out when they currently don't.
So
And all of these approvals were right after it was voted down at town meeting, correct?
So what was voted down at town meeting was the borrowing of the money, a debt exclusion. We're not looking for a debt exclusion. We got a grant to put the water in. We can do the same thing with the sewer and pump station. We have businesses that need the service. Fall River has the capacity. We're in a much better situation than many other communities. Swansea just passed it. They're constructing their sewer next year. They just put manholes in the intersection after the Venus to Milo. However, Somerset doesn't have the capacity for it. They're looking to try to tie into Fall River. We don't have to build a sewer treatment plant. But the other thing is, when you're putting septics around the reservoir, the Watuppa is a reservoir. There's a thing called the Clean Water Act. We need to follow those things.
We got 2 other candidates who want to chip in on this and your opinions?
Can you repeat the question, please, on what was asked?
Sure. George, you want to
I'm
do that?
sorry. So what I wanted to know is what you think is the most important issue facing Westport over the next year and how you plan to address it.
Thank you. So I think that one of the biggest issues here is that you have representation that didn't listen to the people, because I think the people spoke very clear and loud about being forced into paying for something that they don't want to pay for. So I mean, everyone wants clean water, that's fine. I have private water and sewer at my home, and I love it. And I think I don't have any chemicals in there. It's great. You know, and I'll tell you what, right now, I wouldn't want to be forced into having an upgrade. It's very costly. A lot of people on fixed incomes out there, very, very costly for them to upgrade. I don't think that's the right way to do it, to mandate somebody to have to do something that you know that they can't afford. I think we're all a little bit smarter than that, and we can find other ways. Westport has a very low tax rate, and that's great. That is great. What is it, 7.3%, whatever? Commercial, residential, that's good. I don't want to raise taxes on anyone around here. I want to make sure that we put our heads together and come up with real solutions, though. And again, if we bring in some business, I think that's a good way. I think that we need to have somebody that's going to be aggressive, though, and go up to the State House and ask for that local aid that you deserve over here. Because, you know, it shouldn't be put on the taxpayers' backs all the time. We had a lot of money. We had a surplus not too long ago. Let's not forget about that. There's been a little bit of mismanagement, actually a lot of it, mismanagement of our tax dollars spent on these little pet projects and these political things. Listen, we have to get back to representing our people in our communities. Westport is now handcuffed to the other 4 towns. We all got to work together. We all have needs. What can happen in New Bedford, for example, which has the smallest piece of representation, that can affect us here in Westport too. So we have to keep that in mind, that we all have to work together. You have to have a representative that is mindful of that we all, I represent all of those towns. And all of those towns have individual needs, and all of those towns do affect and have to work together. They affect each other. But again, forcing a mandate on someone that, you know, especially at this time, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous right now. People can't afford that. And you know what, they spoke loud and clear, and I think we need to uphold that. We're going to keep in mind again when you go and you vote. Vote for somebody that's going to represent you and your needs.
Thank you, Jesse. Chris?
Very quick clarification. There is no betterment fee. The item that was shot down is a betterment fee. The loop that's going in now is 100% grant, not out of taxpayers' monies. They do not have to connect. There is no fees. There is no higher taxes. It's a free loop through a grant. And again, it's optional. You're not paying anything extra unless you need the water to your house and you want to pay for it. I just wanted to clarify that. 2 candidates have said it's a betterment, it's a mandate. Not true.
We can debate that on the stage. Let's give Chris an opportunity to be heard on it.
So, thank you. So the question that was asked was, what is the #1 issue facing Westport, and what would I do about it? And really, to me, that's actually 2 different questions that are in that question. The first is, what's the most important issue facing the people of Westport? And the answer to that is affordability. Whether you are a young family, a senior, a veteran, everyone is struggling right now, and everyone is trying to make ends meet based on policies that are hurting our wallets, they're hurting our economy, and you have to ask where those policies are coming from. That's #1. The second part of that question is what's the biggest issue facing the town of Westport? And I will tell you that it's the same issue facing not just Westport, but so many other cities and towns in our Commonwealth, and that is that the funding formulas that support our cities and town budgets, that keep property taxes from going through the roof to fund the services that our towns provide, those funding formulas are fundamentally broken. It's not enough to just go chasing earmarks every time, because that's what happens in the state legislature right now. Is, oh, well, you know, you got to get such and such dollar amount for your town, so that means, okay, well, now you're going to vote the way we tell you to vote on this thing right here, and maybe we'll give you an earmark. And what I'm saying is that you have to address the systematic issue that we have on Beacon Hill right now. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We have to send people to Beacon Hill that are going to actually try and fix the problems, and not just try just to work within a system that is fundamentally broken. Because all of these cities and towns, we have structural deficits in our budgets. We have unfunded mandates. It's all coming from the same problem that has to be addressed. And I'll say this: there's a notion that I would get up there and start throwing rocks and just trying to gum up the works. That's not it at all. I am absolutely willing and able, and have over the years worked across party lines to actually solve problems and get things done. And I think that just by being a member of a minority party, I will sit on more committees. I'll have more of an opportunity to give voice to the concerns of Westport, Acushnet, Freetown, Fall River, and New Bedford. I will be able to give voice to your concerns in more policy areas, and therefore have a better opportunity to actually find legislative fixes to these problems that we face. So,
Thank you, Chris. We had 2 questions out here, and then anybody else beyond that? Jeff, ma'am, you can come on down. And folks that have questions, why don't you come up to the podium so we can move it along fairly soon? The folks that have questions, why don't you come down and stand behind us?
Jeff Bull, I'm from Westport.
Speak into the LP here, Jeff.
Okay.
You can pick it up if you want.
I don't think any of you are going to change how the state of Massachusetts does business in the next 2 years, the term of your, and you're going to have to do this every 2 years. You're going to be back. So I like, and the Westport doesn't have a grant writing department or grant writing professional. New Bedford, Fall River, they are tooled up. Paul Schmidt has been great getting some money to us. I want to know what you've actually done in the past, your particular experience, successes in bringing money to Westport through state and federal funding. Because I know it's happened. I want to know how you expect to continue that process if you've had experience doing that. I know we're sitting in a school,
Okay.
40% funded.
I think we've got the question.
Thank you. Go ahead and ask.
Okay, let me explain.
No, don't.
They are going to answer the question, Jeff. I think I'm moderating this, so please sit down. Okay, folks, we're going to have to move this along a little bit with the answers a little bit faster if we can. You're going to have closing 2 minutes each, so you still have time. But these people have come tonight to ask questions. I'm not here to promote campaigns. I'm here to give a voice to the people, the taxpayers in Westport. So bear with me if you could. And try to be appropriately, as fast as you can, answer those questions. Okay, we have this question from Jeff. Who wants to be first? Can you repeat it one more time, Tom? Jeff, the question that I have is what experience, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, what experience do you bring to this office in a short period of time that will be beneficial to our community? I think that's a summary of it, Jeff?
Bringing money to the town.
Bringing money to the town is part of it.
Well, step one would be where is the money going to and where is the money coming from? So in the state legislature,
Experience, what you individually.
I have experience managing contractual obligations and funding on that level. And state and federal contracts. That was a large part of what I did. There are very specific regulations, very specific.
Yeah, keep in mind, everybody's going to have 2 minutes to answer this in detail in terms of why they should vote for any one of you. So, with that in mind, let's see if we can.
Transparency.
Thanks.
Where's the money coming from and where's it going to? That has to be clear.
Anybody else?
So 4 years ago, I ran for the position of planning board, which is volunteer. We don't get paid. We have a tremendous team at the planning board presently. That's what I've done over the last 4 years. Try to work. If anybody watches any of those meetings, and we have an excellent planner now. He's getting things done. We got culverts being built. We're chasing.
Thank you. Next.
Yeah, I gotta say, just like we just brought up the example of getting the water main in town stuff, we're trying every angle we can to bring money into town. Also, when we built the schools, I believe there was a couple of mil that we got extra because the way we did things, we as the board of selectmen supported going forward with it. So I think all around on almost every project we've done, we've got extra funds, we've worked hard, we've made modifications to bring in water to town.
Jesse.
Yeah, working across party lines, I mean, absolutely going up there as an independent. I'm going to be sought after as far as being a swing vote, whichever way you look at it. So I will be able to, and I am capable to work across party lines in order to bring back the aid that we need here. As far as experience goes, I'm part of 2 nonprofits. I'm the vice president of the Friendly Sons of St. Patrick. We specialize basically in just raising money for our community to try to help out those at a disadvantage. The New Bedford Port Society
Actually, I serve on there with you, Mr. Mayor, and you, Representative Schmidt. Raising money for those type of organizations right there, that it's very important. The experience that I bring running a business, for 25 years, I've been keeping that afloat, putting food on the table for my family, making sure that my employees also can do the same, and protecting my clients as well. So I have more business experience, real life experience. None of us here on the stage are a state representative, so we all bring no experience being a state representative to the office.
Thank you, Jesse. Chris?
Yes, thank you. So, as far as, I serve on the school committee, I haven't mentioned that yet, and I will tell you that we have a situation in Westport where our schools are operating under very, very tight budgeting. We have successfully received thousands of dollars in grants. I certainly worked with the school committee and the school administration to bring in grants, whether it's the Greater Fall River Development Grant. We've had many successes just in the last year as far as being able to bring in grant money to try and help fund our programming, and we've also managed to continue funding for a school district with no structural deficit. We make ends meet every year, and as far as, can I say that I've been a selectman for 20 years? No, I can't. But what I can tell you is that when I get up there on Beacon Hill, again, by being a member of a minority party, that means I'm going to be able to participate in more committees. I'm going to be able to have an outsized voice and actually be able to get things done across party lines. I'm not going up there just to talk with members of one party or another. I'm going up there to actually get things done and bring it home. And this does go to the effect, or go to the thing about experience. Experience does matter, but you also have to be able to have fresh ideas and have the ability to find where these structural problems exist and where things can be fine-tuned to actually to work better. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Pam, please.
Hello. I do not reside in Westport. My name is Emerald. I just wanted to kind of circle back. I know we spent some time identifying that there's an issue with the fishing industry, that there not enough, purchasing of our own seafood. But what I'd like to ask is, since we all have identified that there is a potential issue there, and that they may need a bailout, as one person in this audience has said, will you be going back into the state and saying things like, can we look at our regulations that the fishing industry has to deal with? Because they're like 2 months they can take a boat out in a year. That's a hard restriction. It's not a matter that we're not buying local because the prices are higher because we can't fish it. And now we have offshore wind, which is scaring off our fish, or at least they assume that to be the case. So, I think scientists are going to go a long way before they know the true impact. So can we know that you'll be going up there and fighting for our fishermen and saying, let's review the regulations, instead of just saying, well, we all know there's a problem. Let's fight for the actual people that need it, because we all do depend on the fishing industry in this area.
Absolutely. It's a simple answer. Absolutely. It's vital to our economy here on the South Coast. Absolutely support it. And like I said, get together. Now that you've got the power, you get people together to give you the input, know what you're talking about, and go forward with their needs so we survive.
Let's go right down the other end and come back this way.
So again, the bottom line is that absolutely, and I think that the offshore wind is just one part of the challenges that the fishing industry is facing. These regulations have come down over so many years, and they've piled up to the point, like you said, you have such a brief opportunity to actually get out there, and a lot of this, there are certainly a lot that comes from federal regulations, but we really have to look at and reevaluate all sorts of regulations on all sorts of industries that come from the State House. And I do see the first thing that I will do on day one is to stop this offshore wind, work to stop this offshore wind debacle, because this is it's the existential threat right now, for sure, to our fishing industry. And then I certainly want to take a real hard look at rolling back some of these very extensive regulations that just make it impossible to make any sense.
Yeah. So, as far as listening to the fishing industry, I think I made that clear a little before, rather than hear the word soup that's going on up here, actually go down there and speak right to the source. I don't think I didn't see you there this morning.
Yeah, it's funny, I didn't see you at the offshore wind protest, and I never actually heard you say that you're against the industry.
You know, so anyway, we have a boondoggle up here. What we have here is we have a Libertarian Party chairman that has fooled you all because he's trying to make you think he's a Republican candidate. So how long were you the Libertarian Party chairman for?
Okay, Jesse, the Libertarian Party chairman.
Yes. Yeah, you're not a Libertarian Party. Anyway, that's all the really good, ladies and gentlemen. I am a true independent. I could have done what he did too. The Republicans wanted me to be their Republican candidate, okay? But you know, out of respect for all of you, I won't lie to you guys, all right? I've been an independent since 18 years old. Okay, I'm 41 now. I have no intention of flip-flopping, flim-flam man, none of that. Not gonna be a yes man. I'm not gonna be a backbencher, all right? Listen,
Jesse.
you can elect a Democrat.
Jesse, we have closing arguments. We'll have that.
Fair enough. I'm sorry. I'm just a little fired up. Had an espresso before I came in. And you just
no problem. Thank you. Laura.
The fishing regulations appear to be disproportionately put on fishermen. The fishing community shouldn't have to bear all of the costs of complying with these regulations. Of course, it's important not to take all the fish out of the ocean, and people have to make a livelihood. They have to be able to fish, and they have to be able to sell their catch. And having excessive regulations with no funding is not good for our fishing communities, and it's not good for anyone. So making sure that regulatory programs are funded so that individual boat owners and fishermen don't have to bear the cost when they shouldn't have to is absolutely a priority.
Thank you, Laura. Manny.
I will absolutely represent the fishermen, the farmers, and the working class of this community in the 8th District, Bristol. That's why I want to go to Boston.
Thank you. Next, sir.
Good evening, Lucas Correa, Town of Cushman. So I'm a little new to politics, so please bear with me. But I have been a town employee in the town of Acushnet for about the last 5 years. And I did building maintenance, and then I moved on, and now I'm a member of the fire department. And over that time, I've seen a lot of long-time town employees leave the town to make more money in other places. And I've seen this effect of, lack of town funding firsthand. We've lost, a lot of good people that I did know personally. And we've talked a lot about this controversial business of the fishing industry and Vineyard Wind, but I'm sure that these businesses also bring in money to the towns that we live in, right? And in the town of Acushnet, there's been other controversial businesses that we've faced. They wanted to build an addition to our LNG plant. They have this asphalt plant that was shut down, and we were facing a lawsuit from them for some time. So, and I know there was also some talk of maybe building of adding a cannabis store to the town. And these are all controversial things that have been shut down, but there are also other sources of revenue that we could have the opportunity to take. And by shutting these down all the time, by always being, overly cautious of all these things, it's put a burden on the taxpayers, and homeowners now have I think we have some of the highest property tax in the area, and everybody complains about that, yet we're always saying no to these new business ideas. So my question is, what's your view on all these controversial businesses as a whole, and are you always just going to say no to them, or are we going to be open to these new ideas and other sources of revenue?
So from the perspective of the town of Acushnet, we had some controversial businesses that we feel you're asking for the candidates' support for that, or their position on it? Is it?
Yeah, their position on it, because everyone likes to say no, but I'm just curious if there's other opinions that people have on that.
Okay, we'll
Thank
start
you.
down at that end, Chris.
So I have a kind of simple answer to this one, and that is that this is something that needs to be under local control. As a state representative, that type of decision, it would not be my purview. That is something that has to be decided by the townspeople and the committees of each individual town. I certainly would have some opinions on especially with the asphalt plant for sure, but as a state representative, this is a perfect example of something that belongs at the city and town level and not at the state level. So,
Thank you, Chris. Jesse?
Yep, so thank you for that question. So as far as the asphalt plant goes, one great idea would be to restructure the entrance Route 240, and maybe the state could help out a little bit with that. Put an industrial park right behind there, that would alleviate a lot of the traffic in that area. Also with the pollution too. We have to, we did have to step in and make sure that the asphalt plant was doing what they were supposed to, because unfortunately some of the neighbors were feeling some of the repercussions around that area. As far as attracting any business into the town, absolutely, and you know, zoning is always where it's gonna lie with any town, and you know, the zoning. So we need to, you know, let the towns decide what they want to allow in, but gotta be mindful too that we need to stimulate the tax base too. So, you know, that's the balancing act, but the state can help. Cushing gets very little aid from the state. So, you know, having to raise taxes again is where they're looking when they're not getting the aid from the state. But I do think that, you know, restructuring the entrance with Route 240 and, you know, potentially building an industrial park behind there, I think that would actually help a lot for the town of Cushing.
Thank you, Jesse. Laura?
Short answer, yes, absolutely. New businesses and emerging technologies need to be supported. In Acushnet, I understand with the LNG plant and recycling facility that the taxpayers did not want to expand that facility. And so I would listen to the people's voice, especially when it comes to their health and safety, because it does impact them directly. I am not against new businesses at all. If anything, we need to increase or reduce the amount that it costs to form businesses and help out our local businesses through the B2B programs and other similar programs.
Thank you, Laura. Manny?
I absolutely support new business. Not only just new business, the redevelopment of the area. What we do in Westport is we do this all in public meeting. We sit there and a lot of times nobody ever shows up. But it's all in the public meeting. We ask the public to come in. They usually only come when there's a problem. You know, I got John smiling in the audience over there because he's a proponent of this all the time when they come in. We embrace the community to come in and tell us what you want. We have rules and regulations that we have to follow. Zoning that's been created, that's the law. We have to follow those guidelines. However, we take the public's input. And we've been asking them to move forward on certain regulations and new zoning to help redevelop Westport, keep our rural character.
Thank you, Manny. Steve?
The same. I've been taking the advice of the local government, see what they want. I would say in Acushnet, though, there was a big stink over New England Farms, and it's kind of like when we put in the CVS here. Everybody was all up in arms about it, but as soon as it was in, everybody's going there, and everybody seems to be happy. I don't see the issue anymore. But again, just like I said, I have the Economic Development Committee, Infrastructure Committee. We try to get stuff in town that people will go for, and try to work with them. So I'm always there to help with that. I would add, the gentleman also mentioned cannabis dispensaries. They're everywhere now. Westport was promised some funds and we didn't get it. But that's the reason people voted for it. And we just discussed it last night at our meeting. And we have another one in town. So you just got to be careful what you ask for and vet it out. And like Manny touched base on, go to the meetings like you are here tonight, find out about it and give some input.
Yeah, one of the, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm somewhat familiar with Cushing as well. And, the old Warren Brothers, if you would, on South Main Street is going through a lot of generations. And as people move around, whether it's agriculture or business environment, there's some challenges that sometimes the local community needs some support at the state level. And that's maybe something we can look at going forward. I'd like to turn to the next person if I could.
Hi, KVR of Westport. I currently work for Southeast Center for Independent Living, one of 10 independent living centers across the state. My question for all of you today is, would you support an increase to budget line item 4120-200?
Are you folks
I
familiar with
have
that?
a first to that, yes, and I've been approached. Just, I don't know if they want to.
It's a funding increase to support it's $10 million. It's a funding increase of bringing the budget up to $10 million for the independent living centers. I did Facebook message everybody on this, so you did have a chance to research and look this over a few weeks ago. So.
Thank you. My answer simply is yes, I think it's an important addition, and I've been approached by other healthcare professionals to support it.
Right down the line.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Laura?
Short answer, yes, the funding needs to keep up with CPI, and we need to take care of our communities and people who are taking care of the most vulnerable people in our communities.
Jesse?
Thank you for your good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think I was one of those people that answered your question on there. But yeah, absolutely, you have my full support on that. I know that, with the inflation and, the cost of living, the big issues that families are facing with that is that students with special needs are receiving the help while they're in school, but then when they're aging out of the program, it's tough to transition them into an independent lifestyle. And that is a very important thing. It can be very costly to families, and we need to make sure we take that serious and fund that appropriately and make sure that everyone is entitled to that quality of life that we would all love to have. So absolutely, you have my support.
Chris?
As I messaged you back, I absolutely would support an increase in that funding, and I think, again, it speaks to the fact that we have so many wastes in our current budgets. There's so much wasteful spending. There is so much that is not a priority that gets funded over things that actually affect our everyday lives and the everyday lives of people, vulnerable populations that really need these funds. So the bottom line is yes, I would support it, and also again this goes back to a need to have a fundamental reevaluation of the spending priorities on Beacon Hill.
Thank you, Chris. Ma'am, please.
Okay. I live here in Westport, and these questions are for Laura. Are you the same Laura Hadley who filed a suit against the town of Westport for the last 6 years? The same lawsuit that you appealed 5 times and it was finally dismissed and you were fined a couple of $1,000s? Are you also the same Laura Hadley
That
who
is
filed?
correct. These are ongoing legal matters, and accordingly, I certainly cannot discuss them because they are ongoing legal matters. I'm an attorney, so yes, I am involved in litigation, and I will not be answering any further questions on
so
any
are you
legal
the
matters
same
because
Laura
it's a
Hadley
violation
who
of
filed
the
a
rules of
lawsuit
professional ethics. So thank you for your
against
time.
over 34 private residents, elderly, veterans?
As I noted,
You were here at the beginning of the meeting when I
Right.
suggested some of the ground rules.
Right.
I think you've broken the ground rules.
This is relevant because
It's relevant.
this is
I'm
impacting.
not telling you what to do, ma'am, but I'm saying this isn't appropriate at this meeting for. And
Well,
you're at the ground rules.
everybody up here has discussed how the economy has been very difficult for people.
You have
And
all
you've
the
got people sitting
opportunities
in
to
this
discuss that,
audience
ma'am. We have two
who
people
have been
behind you.
impacted by her. They've spent
Yes.
over $100,000 in attorney's fees already.
Okay, I think you made your point, and you can certainly, you have all kinds of opportunities to address that. This isn't the forum for it right now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We get 2 other folks, and I'm going to have to wrap up pretty soon, so if anybody else has questions, you're welcome to come down. We want to be courteous, respectful to the folks, we need to move on for closing statements. But Michael? You're next.
Hi, good evening. I want to thank all the candidates for taking the chance to represent us. And as I've sat in the audience, I've heard varying views and opinions. One thing that I heard a little bit about at the beginning, but actually all of the issues brought up affect the students of Westport. So my question is geared towards the students of Westport. For those that think Beacon Hill is broken, let's rethink that. I want to talk about the Chapter 70 formulas. For years, it talked about how the state's broken, the formulas are broken. I'd like to know your opinion of the 2023 revamping of the Chapter 70 formula. And do you think it's currently in the right? What's been the impact on Westport as it is in terms of the new formula for Chapter 70?
I'll jump in. In short, I have not reviewed the adjustments for the Chapter 70 formulas. I will absolutely do that. And it is important to look at where the money is going and making sure that it is being allocated in a way that does benefit everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Jesse, it looks like you're close to the mic.
Yeah, sure thing. So you're referring to, I would assume, the Student Opportunity Act. And essentially with that, the inflation capped out at about 4.5%, and it did not keep up with inflation. It left our communities in a deficit. I think it's a very good act that was put together. I think it's actually done very well. We have to look into these formulas that aren't working for the towns. They're clearly broken. If you speak to any teacher out there, I mean, there's no need that, for a teacher to have to dip into their own pocket just to supply, their classroom with the tools, to teach their children. Right? For example, that's some complaints that I've been hearing. But we need to make sure that we prepare our kids, to have a brighter future, better tomorrow. Make sure that we invest in securing our schools, giving them the tools that they need to succeed. Maybe the need for a little bit more vocational schooling would be helpful too. It seems like there's a high demand for that. I remember when I sat down with Mayor Coogan, the transportation issue, it's a little inequitable. And we have to work that out too as far as, public school versus regional school transportation. I think that we need to make sure that everybody has a fair shot at that.
Thank you, Jesse. Chris? So the answer to do I think it's turned out, do I think those adjustments have worked? Not necessarily. Let me tell you why. You have a situation with a town like Westport where we have a very vast discrepancy between property values depending on where in town property is located, and when that affects, that ends up affecting the average property value, and it really it makes it so that the side of town where most of the kids live is almost underrepresented in the funding formula. I also think an interesting way an interesting approach that has not really been tried as far as these funding formulas go is to actually look at the need instead of just a per pupil type of formula. Look at the actual needs. And it's not just the Chapter 70, but if you look at the special education funding and the special education circuit breaker, where it's not even automatic. The funding has to be appropriated. So in terms of what Westport is dealing with, for example, we have a situation where we're not getting, the past couple of years haven't actually gotten the full amount of reimbursements expected from the special education needs from the state. And that's just one example of something that really needs to be changed. And also, when you're looking at, I think we had a couple of students over $800,000 per student in assessments because of the needs, the special needs. These needs have to be met. But the problem is when we have these, again, unfunded mandates coming from the state to meet the needs of our children, and yet we can't even rely on consistent funding from the state. That's where there is something is fundamentally broken. And I want to also go back to one specific thing, talking about Chapter 70 and talking about how
A lot of times the pushback I get when I talk about redoing these formulas is that, well, that means you want to take money away from the cities and give it to the towns. And I say, absolutely not. Again, a rising tide lifts all boats. There is enough revenue and there are enough dollars in the state budgets to actually support cities and town districts alike, to support special education. It's just a question of reevaluating the priorities that the Commonwealth has.
Thank you, Chris. Manny?
I haven't reviewed the revamping. However, I have been listening to our educators throughout the whole 8th district. And I can promise, if elected, I will continue to listen to you.
Steve?
It's an interesting formula, and this is a situation where you're representing 5 different districts, and some of them have different needs than we do here in town. It'd be great if we could just go up there and argue for our town, but unfortunately, you've got some bigger diversity in some of our other areas. So yes, I have a concern with Westport getting their funding. In the meantime, you've got to fight for some very diverse communities. So this is going to be one that gives you headaches, especially I'm going to leave my job if I get this position in Cushing Schools, because I'm going to be fighting for that money. So this would be my full-time job, and obviously we'll be doing what I can to get that fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mike. Our last question is going to come from a taxpayer here in the community, but also happens to be the superintendent of schools.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, everyone, candidates. Sometimes you feel like you're getting targeted up there and you're about to be shot, so it takes courage to get up there and state your opinion, so I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone here for coming in. This is so important for you to be a part of this community and the decisions that are made, so I want to thank everyone for being here. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education had a meeting today, and part of the meeting was on the admission policies of vocational schools. There has been a good deal of litigation relative to the inequities that exist in that. My position on that is that they're arguing the wrong position, because when you take a look at the vocational model, the model is broken. Now, I could go on ad nauseum, I won't do it. I will give you one statistic, however. Westport Community Schools graduates the same number of people as the vocational schools do that go into the workforce directly after high school. That's not going to solve a labor problem that exists and is only going to get worse. When we talk about encouraging businesses here, we can't build our way out of this by building more vocational schools. They're $300 million per school. What do you propose to do from a legislative point of view to support the comprehensives so that they can get the funding in order to offer some of these rigorous programs that will move the needle in terms of solving the labor shortages? And thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Just so the candidates would know, we're approaching the 9 o'clock hour right now, and I think this is important. We're a week away from the election, even though 20% of the state of Massachusetts already voted. Yeah, probably more now, you're right. But I'd like to have you answer that question. I guess there's another lady standing up here. We'll give her a chance, and then we'll give the closing statements. Okay? So this question is, what would your proposal be? Tom, I'm going to summarize it for vocational opportunities without building vocational schools at $300,000 a new school. Is that? It's really overview.
Well, if I could, I absolutely support Tom's idea of doing a lot of training within the school. I came here to Westport Schools, Tony, I know you did. We were mixing farmers, mechanics, we had everything. You had an auto body shop, you had a metal shop, we learned everything. I heard a story, somebody came out of high school, only been doing tech for years, got their first house, and it was vinyl siding with cardboard underneath. They had no idea of construction factors. So I like his ideas of getting some world knowledge in different areas in high school, and I think it's a great idea. I hope I can support it and move it forward, because I think they need to know more than just technology in high school.
Thank you, Steve. Manny?
I definitely support it, and I support all Tom's efforts that he's been doing in this building. Some of the different programs that he's trying to get off the ground. I will definitely listen to you, Tom. I'll pick up the phone when you call me.
Laura? Thank you, Manny.
I, of course, support it, but education is critical, and some of the approaches that have been working well are the certification programs within the traditional high schools. So having the ability to go to BCC or other community colleges and get college credits while we're being in the school and making sure that funding is still within the school systems is very important. There really shouldn't be disposable schools. That is not a very good idea. And making sure that all schools, especially our core fundamental schools, traditional schools, they of course need to be funded and keep up with inflation. So that teachers are paid the wages they deserve.
Thank you, Laura. Jesse?
Yes, absolutely. So that hybrid model is absolutely, that's great, it's brilliant. I mean, I support that all day. Preparing our children for tomorrow, teaching them how to work with their minds and their hands. I mean, that's how I was brought up. I was insulating houses at 13 years old with my father. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's very important to know how to swing a hammer and also know how to use a pen, right? So if we can, you know, mesh that together, absolutely. You want a well-rounded human being going out into the workforce, right? You want to make sure that they have all the tools for success. You want to make sure that we integrate that vocational aspect into our high schools. I think that's a very smart way to do things. And you're an expert on it, and I would absolutely take your advice on it.
Thank you, Jesse. Chris?
So, Superintendent Albin, for those who don't know, worked very hard to secure a grant not long ago, so the high school was able to acquire, it was a $50,000 grant for some Z-Space computers for some very advanced technical training, and that's just a perfect example of how you can integrate these vocational training into the comprehensive schools. And I think there really is a question of mission creep a little bit on some of these vocational schools across the state, and how the goals have almost shifted from being exclusively vocational to just being a specialty school, if you will. And I think that there's definitely something to look at as far as trying to get more vocational training, more funding into everyday school districts beyond just the vocational schools. So I certainly want to have more further discussions with Superintendent Alden on that front for sure. So
thank you, Chris. Ma'am, did you want to ask a question? Okay. And we're going to wrap it up with the closing statements after that.
Carrie Pena, question to everybody. Do you believe in climate change?
You got to speak into my.
Do you believe in climate change?
Do you believe in climate change? Is that the question? Climate change, folks. Do you believe in climate change?
Yes.
Yes.
The science is quite clear.
So do I believe that the climate is changing? Absolutely. But let me just.
Well, my next question is,
okay.
If everybody's against the wind, what is your thought? How are we going to fix it? I know that it's not perfect, but what do you have in place of it?
Okay, everybody, I guess said yes, but the follow-up question is how are you going to fix it? Is that correct?
Without windmills and practicing.
Well, what do you propose to do then as a state representative?
So I think it's worth noting that somewhere along the lines, instead of being a steward for our environment, being stewards of our environment and being an environmentalist, somehow the nomenclature, the terminology changed into, well, do you believe in climate change or not? Are you a climate denier and all this other stuff? And I think that by doing that, we've changed it into immediately trying to draw lines on us versus them situation instead of focusing.
So okay, folks, we got to make this fast. So you can communicate back and forth on your stuff through the election. But for purposes of tonight, Chris, you're doing it the best you can answer. Ma'am, I'd ask you if you want to do, you can continue, but you asked a question after 9 o'clock. This was scheduled from 7 to 9, so I'd like to finish this up if we could. Real quickly, in a sentence or two, if anybody wants to speak to it, fine. Be prepared for your closing statements.
What I would do is I would focus on real, actual things that will help protect our environment instead of just government subsidies for pet projects.
Thank you.
Government subsidies.
Thank you, Jesse. You want to speak to that?
Like offshore.
Ma'am? Ma'am, I'm moderating it. I've got your questions. Jesse, you want to speak?
What was that second question, though?
What would you do about climate change?
If you don't support wind, what would you do?
Yeah, climate change is it's a real thing. What would I do about climate change?
No, the wind specifically. We're trying to
What's
save the
your
environment.
question about?
Ma'am, I'd ask you
Tony,
to
it's
sit down.
connected.
I
The
know
wind,
that.
and if they don't believe it, what do they believe in? That's the
What's
question.
Are you asking if I believe in wind and I believe in climate
No,
change?
we're trying to fix the wind for climate change.
Absolutely.
Windmills, okay, they're not working, so what would you
Ma'am, I'll
put?
ask you to sit down, please, at this point. You're out of order. Sit down, please. Okay, if you want to respond to it quickly, let's do that so we can do the closing arguments.
All forms of energy is.
You can carry this conversation on if you'd like to, you folks. I'm sorry, Jesse, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just trying to clarify for other folks in the audience that feel they need to speak out.
Yeah, no, I just out of respect for Carrie, yeah, I mean, all forms of energy, I think that we can look into always. You know, I mean, it doesn't have to just be one way. You know, I mean, we have a lot of bright people out there. I think that we can really figure out a better way to integrate all forms of energy. You got to keep in mind that windmills still run off of you know, diesel fuel. Everything is made from fossil fuels, so this right here is too. So we can't really get rid of that. I don't know if that's to your point, but I don't disagree with you about protecting the environment. We have a lot of marine life that's washing upon our shores too, and that's pretty disappointing too to see that.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. You can include that in closing if you feel you need to. Laura?
We need to invest in diverse forms of both energy generation and soil regeneration and restoring our critical habitat. The environment will fix itself if we let it. Mother Nature can't help and it will. We just have to let nature help and make sure that we're using rain gardens and other technologies that are working all over the world. A good place to start is Denmark, frankly. They've done a really good job at completely revamping their whole country's infrastructure between 2011 and 2013. I was able to see that, and they have small districts, grid power, no more than a couple hundred homes. There are different models, and we need to try all of them that are working successfully and right now.
Thank you, Laura. Manny?
Well, I do support the diversity of energy. And one of my concerns is when they shut the pipeline down, what it did to our fuel prices. Our fuel prices were, I use a lot of diesel fuel, it was $2 a gallon. It went to $5 a gallon again. What that did to the economy and the affordability to everybody was devastating. Now we're getting the same thing with the wind. And now I'm concerned when the next administration gets in, if they decide to just shut that off. I mean, it's going on, we can't just shut it off. We have to work in all the directions and have a diverse grid.
Thank you, Manny. Steve?
I'll summarize in a sentence. I look at all green energy options and see what works out the best. That nobody threw solar out there. Solar is also providing some, but I look at all options.
Thank you. 9:10, folks. I promised we'd be from 7 to 9 to 10 minutes over. I'm going to give each candidate a maximum of 2 minutes. If you don't need it, don't